I'm Jessica Jordan. You're listening to American Edition on the Voice of Russia. South Korea's President Lee Myung-bak is demanding an apology from Japan's reigning emperor, saying he would not be welcome in South Korea until he directly acknowledges guilt for Japan's colonial rule of the Korean Peninsula from 1910 to 1945. Lee also made another controversial move this week. He set foot on the disputed Takeshima islets of the Sea of Japan, which are claimed by both South Korea and Japan. I'm talking more about all of this with my guest, Pavel Leshakov. He's director of the International Center for Korean Studies at Moscow State University. Mr. Leshakov, thanks so much for joining me on the line from Moscow.
You're always welcome. Thank you.
So what do you make of Lee's actions and also what he said about Japan's emperor, demanding that he show guilt or show some sign that he regrets what happened there during colonial rule from 1910 to 1945?
So actually, I think that this is a bit late, but answer to because 2 years ago there was a 100th anniversary of colonial rule, and President Lee Myung-bak was waiting from Japanese side to make some announcements and to make some on that matter. But 2 years ago, the Japanese made rather soft announcement on this matter. And these days, it's the last year of President Lee Myung-bak in power. So that's maybe his reaction to the situation.
From what I understand, Lee was responding to comments that Japan's emperor made back during a visit from South Korea's president back in 1990 when he visited Japan. At that time, Emperor Akihito said, quote, "I think of the sufferings your people underwent during this unfortunate period, which was brought about by my country, and cannot but feel the deepest regret," end quote. Is that not an admittance of guilt there and of showing that Japan regrets what happened?
Yes, I know that there was some kind of a regret said by the emperor back in 1990, and that was also the anniversary of starting the annexation of Korea. And as I mentioned, the Korean party, they are waiting for Japan to not only to express regret, to confirm that that was a brutal colonization.
But why do they need them to make that claim? But why do they need them to make that claim once again?
So this is, I think that's very important for them to, because there are some controversies. Some say that during this colonial period, that was not a pure colonial, that Korea was economically developing much better than before that period. So they need to legal confirmation from Japanese that they accept that this was a brutal time, that was a brutal deal, and that, of course, there are some other issues which could be followed. So that's the problem of the mutual history, and without accepting the fault, Japanese fault, it is very difficult to settle other problems, even small, like the territorial disputes over Tokto Island, or maybe some other sex slavery during the war period. So all this is interconnected, and without solving all these problems, and each side, especially Koreans, they're attempting that Japanese should make the first step.
How could Lee's comments and also his actions in stepping foot on those islets, how could that really change Japan-South Korea relations?
So actually, that's emotional exchange of views is happening from time to time, and I don't think that it will change. It's like a seesaw policy. Sometimes they're emotionally and they're contradicting and they're confronting, and within some time the situation changes because they are very close economically. And even if you know, this spring there was some first attempts to make a kind of a military pact between the two countries. So that is Actually, if Lee Myung-bak was trying for the second presidency, I would say that that was a political move, but he is not in the president race, so I don't know why he was making these steps, actually.
It seems to go against other things he said in the past. People are viewing this as anti-Japan rhetoric, but people who have worked with Lee before have said he's been pro-Japan in the past. Any ideas to maybe recent instances that could have spurred these comments?
Yes, actually, Lee Myung-bak was one of the most pro-Japan presidents, and I mentioned that even some military cooperation was started during his presidency. Moreover, he was born in Japan. As far as I know, he was born in Osaka. That's why, for me, it's also rather strange why he was so sharp. So the only explanation is that he was not satisfied with the Japanese action 2 years ago on the century anniversary of the annexion.
Given what we know about Japan's emperor, do you believe we will see some action from Japan? I mean, they've expressed outrage over the fact that he set foot on the Takeshima islets. Do you think they will respond to all of this?
I think that that is already moving for a long, long time, and I don't think there will be some. Of course, there will be some emotional responses and some diplomatic moves, but I think that more important things are coming in the nearby. That's APEC meeting in Vladivostok, and that maybe the much spoken about possibilities for reforms in the north and for some. So I think that this issue will be put aside for the time being.
It's interesting because earlier in his presidency, Lee had been making plans for Akihito to visit South Korea to mark a new era in Japan-South Korea relations. Do you believe there will be steps moving forward, and what might those new relations look like between Japan and South Korea?
So actually, Japan is the second largest trader of South Korea, and the cultural exchange are also going on the rise. And this is the so-called Hallyu, the Korean wave, which is very popular in Japan. And the mutual and Japan language, I think, is now very popular in Korea, and the same in Japan. So. And there was a meeting of two presidents, Chinese and leaders, Chinese, Japanese, and Korean leaders. They tried to create a kind of a common market, economical and cultural. So I think that action, presidential action, is out of that long-term strategy.
Do you think the region of South Korea depends more on Japan or vice versa?
Of course, they are mutually dependent, but previously, and I think even now, Korea is a bit more dependent on some technologies from Japan.
As well as grain and things like that, right? Foodstuffs being sent from South Korea?
I think grain is not the item, but some so-called key point in IT technologies, they are still getting from Japan.
What do you think Japan would need to do moving forward in order to repair what Lee is viewing as damaged relations between the two regions?
I don't think that there is much to be done. The only way is to be less emotional in dealing with the issue of Tokto Island and of historical things like colonial period and war period, and there was also a Korean War, which is, of course, it's the problem between two Koreas, but it's also, if you deal with these very specific and very dangerous at the same time points with emotions, you couldn't solve them and you couldn't go forward.
I've been speaking with Pavel Leshakov. He's director of the International Center of Korean Studies at Moscow State University. And we have been speaking about some remarks that have made by South Korea's president demanding an apology from Japan's reigning emperor, saying the emperor would not be welcome in South Korea until he directly acknowledges guilt for Japan's colonial rule of the Korean Peninsula. Really appreciate you joining me, Mr. Leshakov, and thanks so much for your comments.
Thank you.